audit that business as we discussed so that you have those aggressive growth goals the next 5 years. You want to grow your business as we head towards the 2030s, but you want to make your business more agile or flexible and be aggressive with pricing. Inflation's coming back. Raise your prices when sentiment's high so you're not trying to catch up.
The Industrial Growth Institute podcast connects you with the big thinkers, makers, and subject matter experts across all aspects of an integrated B2B industrial revenue growth function. From strategy, board oversight and transactions, through all the phases of manufacturing marketing, the complexities of industrial sales, and the nuances of marketing and sales technology and customer experience, I speak with guests who bring insights, innovative perspectives, best practices, and twists on traditional approaches. Each episode explores high-level thinking and in-the-weeds actionable tactics. If you enjoyed these discussions, then please help me out by liking and sharing the podcast, and especially by leaving a comment and giving a review. So with no further ado, let's jump into this episode. Welcome back to the Industrial Growth Institute podcast, where we spend a lot of time diving into mindsets and tactics that are necessary to help marketing and sales succeed, really regardless of what competitors of the market are doing. I always say that excuses are for other folks, not for the companies that make the stuff on which we all rely on a regular basis. Nevertheless, it's important for us to understand trends or market changes. Particularly, I'm recording this the May of 25. There's lots of tariff disruption, trade turmoil, tax uncertainty, spending freezes, and more. So by understanding what's going on and what's coming, it can help us tailor messaging. We can plan products. We can figure out pricing and service packaging. We can think about how we engage buyers as their world is in turmoil. So today I'm excited to chat with Michael Feuz about economics and sales and business planning. Michael is a key member of the ITR Economics team of expert economists and consultants. If you've been to one of your trade association meetings, you've probably sat through one of the Bolio brothers. I'm probably not saying that right, Mike. You can correct me.
Got it. Well,
one of the Bolio brothers engaging. They're really engaging, kind of entertaining economic forecasts. And Michael has joined that circuit with them. He's not your typical academic economist. He joined the Navy on a special contract headed for BUD/S based on his fitness and ended up with a medical discharge. Then he embarked on more than a decade as a technology sales rep, with a really strong track record of performance, even while at the same time earning his master's in economics from George Mason at, I assume, at night or at the same time. He's been a finalist in a national speaking competition in addition to being widely published in various well-known publications. His industry experience crosses industries and business models from manufacturing, construction, financial, including franchises and enterprise level and SMB. So in other words, he brings a very practical perspective to his work. And I'm excited for this conversation. Please do your part, hit the bell, drop a comment, and hold on as we dig into ITR's prediction of a 2030s depression and talk about how we should prepare. So with that, thank you for joining me, Michael.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I'm excited to just have a good conversation.
Absolutely. But in your bio, I think I may have excluded perhaps the most important point, that you're a dad to many children, and congratulations on your newest baby. I think it's your sixth.
Yeah, that's correct. Number 6, we've had 6 babies in 8 years, so it's a lot of chaos at our house.
Oh my goodness!
But it's a lot of fun. Our house has become the house in the neighborhood. When the school bus stops, all the kids end up in our yard. So the other day, I think we counted 17 children running around our yard.
Holy mackerel!
So it's fun. I mean, it'll be good memories when they're older, hopefully.
Hopefully you're around to make the memories. Before you went on paternity leave, you had already delivered 25 keynotes in the first 4 months of 25. You must live out of a suitcase.
I do. I try to. They're great here at ITR. They let us kind of, pull back the reins when we need to. Obviously, I'm saving up for one of those 12-passenger vans, so I loosen the reins a little bit, trying to get a new van bought for the family and hopefully pay as much of it in cash as possible.
We're going to talk about debt as we go along.
It's a lot of fun, and it's fun to just meet people all over the country, especially folks that have been in the industry for 30, 40 years. The amount of knowledge I'm usually meeting, it's humbling.
Right. Well, tell me about your speaking career. How did it start? What was your topic in that competition that you're a finalist in?
Yeah, that topic, that was run through the State Policy Network. They are a think tank that focuses on state and local issues, but they run a national contest. They've done it for quite some time, called Great Communicators Competition, and they kind of leave it and they let you enter with picking your own topic. And it's funny, the topic I picked at the time, and this was, gosh, probably 2017 or so, if I remember correctly, I picked free trade, which, I mean, how pertinent it is today.
Yeah.
And my premise on the talk was that free trade helps build geopolitical peace, because if you're intimately connected with other nations and agreements, you're less likely to go to war with each other. And then once you're selected as a finalist, they usually send you to a cool city. I live outside of Washington, D.C., and that year, the cool city they picked was Washington, D.C. A little bummer on my part. The year before, I think it was in Denver. Then it was Nashville. I got the D.C. year. So I didn't stay in a hotel or get to travel at that time. So that was a little bummer. I think my topic then was on that they assigned you, and you had like one night to prepare, was on privacy issues. So essentially the Fourth Amendment, the idea of, how much do you want government intruding into, everything from your credit card statements, and what they're really looking for is your ability to craft stories and build emotion to connect with people. So I didn't win. The gentleman who won, I'm still friends with. He just definitely deserved to win in the finalists. He blew it out of the water. He was better than me at the time, probably still is better. I've gotten a lot better over the years. Try to get better every time I speak.
Well, you're certainly getting the reps in. And it seems like the vest is kind of your trademark. When somebody sees you on stage, you're going to be wearing a vest, right?
I just decided it was practical at first. It helps keep the tie in place when you're wearing a tie. It keeps the shirt. It just looks tighter up there. But now I've kind of made it my MO. Eventually, I'll graduate to the bow tie and the tweed suit, but I don't know if I'm there yet.
So my knowledge of ITR comes primarily through the trade association speaking. I assume that was an important part of the skill set that they hired you for, not just economics knowledge, but your ability to get up and tell that story in an engaging way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably one of the rare people. I don't get terrified on stage. I actually enjoy it. I get a lot of energy. I think it's ranked ahead of death as some people's greatest fear.
Right.
Often, I don't have that fear, so that's lucky. I'm very lucky there. They have definitely invested a lot in refining and improving my skills. We have a guy, Bill, on our team who has a long career in public speaking, who watches all of our tapes. So we review our game tape, and he's critiquing. Can be very tough, but in a caring way.
Right.
He has definitely made me better. And then I had fortunate to really work with Alan Bolio over the last 3 years. And Alan has 40 years of experience. He's the cheat code. If I can get 40 years and 3 years working with them, I want to do that. So,
and your job title is actually economic speaker. It's not economist who speaks or consultant who speaks. You're an economic speaker.
Yeah. My general role is two. I have a book of clients who I meet with regularly, but the reports we deliver to them, that's a team effort, right? There's a lot of really smart people in the background who prefer not to speak publicly, but they're absolutely brilliant. We all collaborate and build these reports, but then I take their work and present it to our clients and help them with their planning, strategic, understanding the ups and downs. And then the other part, if I'm not meeting with clients, I'm on the road at these association meetings.
And when you get up on stage, is your typical topic just a kind of review of what you all expect to happen, or do you dive into particular angles normally?
Yeah, the goal is always to tailor it to the industry and the association so it's as relevant as possible to the room. Obviously, the big macro stuff's important, or it's the headlines everyone's reading, so we don't want to ignore those. We want to address those, but we want to make it as relevant and personalized to the room in front of us. Now, sometimes I'll meet with groups that are very broad. There's a lot of different industries in the room, and that has to be more of a general presentation. But we always want to meet with the folks beforehand. The most important question I always ask is, what are the biggest obstacles that, I'm asking to put it generally because there's hundreds of business leaders, but what are the biggest obstacles everyone's generally facing in the room? I want to make sure I understand that. And then when we're speaking, economic data is great. I think when we listen to a lot of economists on TV, we don't know who they're speaking to. They're saying a lot of fancy things. It sounds scary at times. Our goal at ITR is always, here's the data, that's great, but what does it mean for me? Right. And what can I do with it?
Right.
And that's the most important thing.
All right. Well, so certainly there's some important data that we're going to talk about with this scary forecast that you all have. But let's back up. Yeah. You aspired to be a SEAL. You got the special recruiting slot based on your fitness. How old were you at the time?
Yeah, so I was graduating college. I wasn't the greatest undergrad student just by lack of effort. I was playing college sports. I think that was what kept me my grades high enough to keep mom and dad happy. Um, and at the time, I think I picked up the book, The Lone Survivor, which everyone was made into a movie, but it wasn't a movie at the time. Mm-hmm. And just the idea of these guys are the elite. I was like, I want to do this. And so after I graduated, I enlisted, did not go the officer route. I applied for an officer slot, but if you're not coming out of the academy for the teams, it's hard to get it. And I was like, I'd rather enlist and become a SEAL than go officer in another job. So did that. Obviously, you had to pass both psychological tests, academic type tests, as well as physical fitness tests to earn a slot. So go to basic. At the time, after basic, you go to a place called Bud's Prep, where you wait for enough Bud candidates to show up, and then you head out to Coronado. And it was kind of in that process that they figured out that my eyesight was degenerating.
Really?
It was a genetic disease that shows up in your early 20s called keratoconus. So I'm lucky they caught it, but it ended my naval career. I got it treated experimentally. There was only 2 or 3 doctors in the U.S. who were doing this experimental procedure. I tried to use that to go back to the Navy, but by that point, bin Laden had been killed. The SEALs were really getting a lot of media. They were no longer the silent warriors as they like to think of themselves.
Right.
And they had more than enough volunteers at that point. And that was the Obama year sequestration. We were trying to downsize. So,
what sports did you play in?
Started my family. God always has a bigger plan for you.
Right. What sports did you play in college?
Shockingly, I'm only 5'9". I played basketball.
Really?
I was delusional. I was 6'6" in my head. So,
and have you maintained that same level of fitness as you're traveling so much and being a dad?
No. Plus, with kids, I have a weight room in my house. If I will lift 3 times a week, that's good. I play pickup basketball once a week. But the danger with kids is you're busy during the work week. I work from home. You go up. You're like, what's for lunch? You see they didn't finish the chicken nuggets or the mac and cheese.
Right.
You eat it quick. That's not exactly an optimal athletic diet. And that's I could use to trim down a little bit.
So after that, then you built a sales career from BDR through account manager to enterprise sales exec. Some people stumble into sales and some people say, that's what I want to do. How did you end up there?
More by necessity. So at that point, getting out of the Navy, we were still coming out of the Great Recession. So the job market was tough. So kind of fell into tech sales, which is a big thing around the Northern Virginia, greater DC area.
Right.
Then you get married. And it's that idea of like, I can make enough here to support a family. Mm-hmm. But I was at the time was like, I don't want to do this in my 40s. And I started falling in love with economics, just reading it on my own. And I was like, I'm going back to school for economics. And I want to use this as my springboard out of tech sales. I still have a decade of experience. If there's ever unfortunate, unforeseen events in my life, I can certainly go back to it. I think I've built that insurance policy, but it was amazing that George Mason University, which is a unique econ program, was in my backyard. So
we're going to talk about Tyler Cowen and GMU and some of those things. But first, I want to dig a little bit more into sales.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
I believe very strongly that many companies, as they think about the market challenges that they're facing, don't understand how much they need to focus and refine their sales process. So one of the things that jumped out at me as I looked at what you've done is that in the middle of COVID, you helped shift a go-to-market motion from inbound to outbound. There's been so many companies that have gotten honestly fat, dumb, and lazy with inbound leads, and they're still getting some, not as many, but the quality is declining substantially. And so they are having to lean into outbound, but they don't know how to do it. How did you figure that out? And kind of how did you iterate on process to make it work?
And it was really a learning experience. So I was at this company, Go Canvas. Great place to work. Really enjoyed my time there. And they were like one of those companies. They had lived solely off inbound leads.
Right.
But we noticed exactly what you said. The quality was dwindling. We had aggressive growth goals. And you do the math. You're like, the growth goal we won't achieve the growth goal living this life. So it became we're going to create this outbound team, figure out this process, become hunters. And it was a lot. At first, it becomes, you just want success. And sometimes you make the mistake of, they call it the shotgun effect. It's just call everyone. You're that nightmare when people pick up the phone. Like, oh God, no. And it's tough, but you want to, I always tell, when we're hiring, I mean, I'm biased, but I was like, hire athletes.
I agree. Absolutely
folks
agree.
That get yelled at. They've taken their lumps. They've been through failures. They like a challenge.
Yep.
Like, just hire athletes. Get the egos in the room, but folks that have grinded it out and been humbled at the same time.
Yep.
Then it became more about precision selling. It's, we understood our markets, but we were just going after everyone. So we became very aggressive with trade shows. We wanted to have more meaningful conversations. We did lean into some of our marketing content a little bit, from the sense of, instead of turning everything into a sales pitch, how can we provide value? Just straight, pure value. A lot of times, like, we're doing a webinar, and the webinar is in the backdoor way to get you to buy. It's like, let's actually provide value. Let's start having meaningful conversations. Let's understand the problems and how they view the problems. And we know the problem we want to solve. Let's build the relationships first. It became a little bit more patient. And then that patient on the deals, but then it became larger deals in the end. Mm-hmm. I think I learned that specifically in the oil and gas industry, where deals would take exceptionally long, but when you got them done, not only was the initial deal much larger, there was so much room to grow and expand too.
And I would say that the oil and gas industry may be the only one where I think using the market as an excuse actually has some legitimacy. I mean, when that market turns down, nobody is buying anything, period. There's no way around that. But when you were rocking and rolling, you were doing 2x your next highest colleague, not beating them by 10%, not squeaking into President's Club. You were crushing the competition. How were you doing that?
I don't think it was special. I don't think it was me. I think it was discipline. It was taking care of the little things, so then the big things would fall in place. Like, I knew,
but by definition, that was special. That was you, because the others weren't doing it, right?
Yeah, but it was nothing that anyone else could have done it. It wasn't, I have an IQ of 150 or something, and sorry, you can't replicate it. This is something anyone can replicate. It was, I knew where every deal was. I knew what the next step was. I had it locked in. I had real relationships with the guys that I was trying to partner with. If they called me on a Saturday, I picked up on a Saturday. I tried to, I always, if I'm with my kids, they know I'm very, I make sure I try not to have it interfere, but I was making sure I was doing all the little things.
Right.
If my senior director called me, I knew I was like, that deal will not close this quarter. I was brutally honest too.
Right.
I did not fluff my pipeline. I was like, that deal will not close this quarter. And here's the 3 reasons why. I know it will close next quarter. Was
there a methodology that you found was particularly effective?
I'm big on the challenger sale. Okay. That's what I kind of grew up in. Big advocate of it. That's the primary one. I don't know. Do you have a favorite one too that you go with, or that?
So I think the short answer, no. I mean, I think Challenger is strong. I think baseline selling is strong. I think Sandler has a place, although I did
Sandler training too as a younger rep.
It feels a little bit manipulative in today's world. I think you can take certain lessons from it, upfront contracts and some of those kinds of things, and be effective. There's a lot of great stuff at certain aspects of the sales process. I mean, Keenan talking about gap selling is really brilliant, the way he digs in and asks those consultative selling questions. But I think that people have to adapt it to their industry and to their circumstances.
Yeah.
All right. So ITRs, kind of they make their name by suggesting to companies that if you know what's coming, even if you can't control it, that you can position yourself for success. As we jump into that part of the conversation, I still want to kind of hang on for just a minute longer about this individual sales piece, because it feels to me that's largely applicable at the individual sales rep level as well. If you know that there's a slowdown coming, you know you need to change your messaging, you know you need to get to the C-suite instead of the director level who gets told there's a spending freeze. Do you agree? Do you think that Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you there.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I get to speak to it. It's always interesting. It's not my number one audience, but I would say I'm in year 3 of speaking, so I can't go back 20 years. But so far, I would say 3 to 5 times a year I speak in front of like a company sales kickoff. And I'm always I think it's good that I have my 10 years in sales because I'm sensitive to the fact that I don't want to lie. I
Right.
don't want to exclude data, but I don't want it to become a self-fulfilling prophecy if I'm about to say,
Right.
it's a slowdown. Every sales rep then starts lowering I call it the tyranny of low expectations.
Yep.
So I don't want that to happen, but it becomes the idea of if you understand how the economy is moving, where you are in what we call the business cycle, where your industry is, you're no longer just at the whims of the cycle. You understand this is where we're going. This is where I lean in, or here are the areas of opportunities where there is upside during the slowdown.
Right.
Hey, it's slow right now in the medical equipment space. I need to lean over into, the data center space,
Right.
or, I'm just pulling from the top of my head. It's where do we pivot to? Where do we lean to? And then it's, hey, when you're at the bottom of the cycle and we're about to come out of it, it's time to start ramping up, even though you're feeling really low.
Right.
Get aggressive. Start having those conversations, and bring some of that out. I try to give them, bring this data to your deals. You can weave it in from ITR's long-term labor outlook. Businesses need to be investing in technology and solutions that makes their current employees more productive and reduces their need to grow their labor pool because there's not going to be enough out there.
Right. Yeah, aside from grit, I maintain that business acumen is a hugely important differentiator for enterprise salespeople. Obviously, it helped you, and you were thinking bigger picture about the economy, about markets, and I guess that was, at that same time was when you were getting your master's in economics and thinking about your schedule. I'm thinking you must have been one of the few people at George Mason that actually worked harder than Tyler Cowen.
The room was always divided. There was always the few of us that were the working professionals, and then there were the 22-year-olds who just came out of grad school, were going right into it. And I was jealous of them. I want my PhD still. Right. It just becomes one of my friends who's in his 50s is like, don't rush it. I just got mine. You have plenty of time to get your PhD. And I admit it's for vanity. So it's not going to change my pay structure at this point. But I was always jealous of the 22-year-olds who had PhD paid for, didn't have to worry about a job, children to support. Right. But the room was divided. But yeah, it was a lot. It was doing a lot of studying at 11 o'clock at night. And I used sometimes to be like, I'm so interested in this, but I know I'm not retaining everything I want to retain. Right. So that was frustrating. But you know what? I loved it enough that you just, you thank God that you had this opportunity. It's before you, and take advantage of what you have.
Do you still follow Marginal Revolution? Oh,
yeah. I will still go cite it. Well, I want to see if something's going on. I want to see what Tyler and the other gentleman, I'm blanking on his name now. I usually have it flagged. Usually they have great. Or if I'm looking to how to explain something better to a client, I always want to see hey, I know they've talked about this before. How have they said it? Yeah.
So I guess George Mason makes sense. Not only was it geographically convenient, but if you're the spark that captured your interest was reading Hazlitt's Economics in One Lesson, and particularly the broken window fallacy. So certainly George Mason, with its rather libertarian bent, I guess, made sense for you.
Yeah, it was just amazing that it was in the backyard. Hazlitt, I read, Hayek's Road to Serfdom, some Mises. Didn't really read Adam Smith. You all know The Wealth of Nations. I've now read it in entirety because of grad school. Had to read it in one class, which was awesome because I don't think I would have disciplined myself to read 900 pages of Adam Smith without it. Now I've thought about going back to reread it. But yeah, the style, they call it mainline economics at George Mason because it's not purely Austrian, for those who know what that means. They're pulling from other schools, but mainline is that inheritance coming out of Smith And they even go back farther at times. They go back to the scholastics who started tapping into some of the lessons as well in the high Middle Ages, which is, it's fascinating to learn. It wasn't just the Enlightenment. We suddenly discovered this.
So free markets, limited government, individual responsibility. To create wealth, you have to actually save and invest in capital stock, some of those basic sorts of lessons.
Yep. And George Mason also takes the human person extremely serious. Modern economics, we'll call it mainstream. They're too willing to put a number on a person and think that they can manipulate it. George Mason, we would learn all the math for the real world for the economics career, but they would overly stress that you cannot quantify a human being who has different motives. They value things differently. They have different goals that you can't measure, and be very careful about trying to quantify a person. And that was very refreshing for me. That's what always excited me about the Austrians. They took the human person serious.
Right. Let's talk about uncertainty. You obviously had phenomenal sales success during COVID, and we're in another period of profound uncertainty now. If we put aside the tariff question, we'll come back to that later. I understand that's a big hypothetical to put it aside, but the reactions that I'm hearing are, companies concerned about what might happen, not so much what has happened. There's all of this paranoia. They just think that it's going to be horrible. Nobody can justify why that might be, except that there's all this turmoil. Now, I've got a pretty narrow focus in the world where I live with middle market manufacturers. But if we talk about the tariff situation and we accept this kind of broad uncertainty, what sort of advice is ITR giving clients for the short and medium term?
Yeah, I mean, uncertainty can be a growth killer, or certainly a key component of it. A lot of our communication to our clients a lot of the fundamentals for economic growth are already in play, even with this uncertainty. Yes, if the uncertainty doesn't abate, probably by the end of this month, end of May, we'll get less growth. But we're absolutely telling them, it is very unlikely. We are not looking at a recession right now. We're looking at the leading indicators. We're looking at business profitability, business corporate cash on hand, liquidity. We're looking at the consumer right now. All of the components are there for growth. We will get growth. If we drag out the uncertainty, it's likely we're not going to have the same levels of growth materialize. We probably still have a little grace period left. From a planning perspective, I think our biggest fear isn't, oh my gosh, we're going to get a recession now. Our biggest fear is businesses are going to miss the opportunity that 2025 could yield them, an opportunity to set themselves up for 26 through 29. And if we get so skittish and the anxiety peaks, you're not going to take advantage of positioning yourselves to be ready for the further growth that's coming in 26 to 29.
And that's the short story, that you all believe the second half of this decade is going to represent a great opportunity for growth, if I understand correctly.
Yes.
And you offer that opinion as a company with a 94.7% forecast accuracy. I'm intrigued. How do you quantify that forecast accuracy?
Yeah, I mean, we look at it historically where we average in. We check ourselves every year. We look back. What did we say in January of 24? If you had heard me speak in January 24, I'm telling you X. If you bring me back in January 25, how did we do? And then we do average it over across, our history as well, which is at 94.7. So, I mean, 24 was a lot better than 23 on the accuracy standpoint. Most of our looking at industrial production, looking at GDP, Canadian industrial production, retail sales, I think some of the big ones. We were between 97 to 99. Wow. The one that sticks out in 23 was the housing market. We were only about 88% accurate on residential construction. And but we value transparency. Obviously it's easy to brag when you're 99%, but when we hit 88, that's kind of,
it's still better than most economists' forecasts, I would say.
Yeah, but we still put it out there and we explain, where did we go wrong? What did we miss? And what we missed then was that really it was unprecedented, but the mortgage rate overshot the federal funds rate, and it follows more the treasury yield, but both, it really overshot both historically, and it really disrupted housing starts this time around. And that gap between the treasury yields and the mortgage rate now is larger than it's been for many decades at this point.
And I guess the corollary to that is there's a huge pent up demand. So if we can narrow that and basically unlock that demand, then there's a huge tailwind for that sector.
Yep. There's so much demand for housing that we're going to keep the demand dampened or sidelined because of affordability. Now, there's some trends. Prices have generally been more flat, but they haven't come down from that COVID run up.
And affordability certainly hasn't come down.
Oh, yeah. I have this great map. It shows the deficit. If anyone's seen me recently, or probably I think we all use it, the speakers, I call it's my You're Screwed index. But it's a map of the U.S. and it shows the income deficit by state to afford the average home in each state. And it's all red. Besides one state right now, West Virginia is in the green.
So I was going to say, it's not Massachusetts, I can tell you that.
Yeah, so it's tough. Obviously, California, Hawaii, the Northwest is pretty brutal right now. The Midwest has the least amount of unaffordability. So lipstick on the pig there a little bit. But
all right. So a golden period ahead for the next 5 years, assuming that we don't derail it over the course of the next few months with this prolonged uncertainty. But then on the backside of that, as we roll into the early 2030s, this gloom and doom forecast, ITR has been out there saying now for several years that they project that there's going to be a 2030s depression.
Yeah, so 2014, I believe it was 2014 where Brian and Alan first came out and said the first half of the 2030s will be an economic depression. So not even the R word, the D word.
Right.
And we've been holding true to that. We often get asked, have you changed? Did COVID change it? Have you changed it since the election? Or if Elon Musk doges the government back into a reasonable size, will that save us? The answer to all those is no. COVID potentially risks making it worse from the sense that we've been forecasting a recession in 2026 before COVID. And that was kind of our long-term view. The COVID disruption kind of pulled it forward. We see 26 as a growth year. That means the cliff could be higher.
Right.
We don't get that little bit of a 26 correction. So now the cliff's higher, the fall is higher.
All right. So 5 fundamental converging forces that you believe are all intersecting to drive this: demographics, healthcare costs, inflation, entitlements, and government debt. Talk a little bit about is there one that's the primary driver? Is there one that we can ameliorate somehow? Or is all of this just completely baked into cake and we're just spectators?
Yeah, the middle three, the middle
healthcare,
three,
inflation, and entitlements.
Yeah, those three are probably kind of the cause of 1 and 5. I'd say 1 and 5 are the big ones. It's that demographics and this debt cycle that we're on. And the demographics being the baby boomers are the largest generation, and they're going to be exiting the workforce. By 2030, the vast majority will be retired. If you're a baby boomer, you're going to be fine in the 2030s if you're not on super fixed income, right? You've been fortunate enough to save for retirement. If that's you're going to be fine. It's your kids and your grandkids who are going to take the hit. But it's that idea that we anticipate inflation. It's the demographics is probably the number one, but it's with that debt cycle. I try to paint the picture by saying that we're forecasting inflation to be back up to 7 to 8% in 29. And imagine at that point, which we're forecasting, we start to feel the early onset of economic decline. You can't do quantitative easing, right? When you have 7 or 8% inflation, or you're going to have 10 or 11% inflation pretty dang quick. And now you're in a world of trouble. Also, those who will be working, Gen Xers, Millennials, Gen Z, they're already going to be having their income eaten up by inflation. You're going to need to tax them more to pay for Medicaid and entitlements. So inflation plus taxes eating things up, it's a lot of less capital being able to be invested to grow the economy.
And is the thesis that there's going to be a lot of destruction, kind of creative destruction or destruction, and that there'll be a reset? Or do we somehow just kind of establish a new normal coming out of it?
We're due. If you look at, again, this is kind of like our black box that we keep close to the vest, and even I'm not privy to it, but our long-term business cycle theory, which I'm not fully purview to it, but based on it, we are due for a new technology entrance based on historical trends. Now, that could be AI. It could be quantitative computing with it. It could be something else. That will kind of take us into the next era.
Got it.
So it won't be a new normal. I think as human beings, we'll be thinking like, this is it. It's never going to be any better. I think that's why following the data is important, because around 2035, 2036, we're going to be feeling pretty low, but that's where get aggressive, start buying back in. I mean, if you want to buy that beach property, you're going to have a great deal around that time. That's where a lot of new millionaires will be minted. And we'll be going into that next growth phase. And the U.S. is going to remain the number one economy through this and for the next 100 years.
All right. So if I'm a business owner or an independent director with a company, should we have a plan to exit in 28 and just keep our powder dry and buy back in at a discount in 2035? Take the company back?
That could be an option. That's certainly an option. We have been running an analysis where we give a 15-year forecast to our clients who choose that program. And part of that analysis is evaluating their space, their markets, what they sell, how and what they're going to likely feel in the 2030s. And it's, can you address this now to be better positioned if you're a high risk? Or is it, hey, we got to talk about an exit strategy?
But what about a tactical exit instead of a retreat? What if you say, hey, we're riding pretty high right now. We can get a great multiple. Let's take that. Let's put the cash, put the cash aside, do what we want with it, and then take the company back at a discount when it's distressed and rebuild it.
Oh, absolutely. You can, that'll 100% be something you can take. And it's thinking about saying, if you own certain commercial real estate for your company, do I sell it and rent it back for that period and then buy it back at the low point? That's another strategy. I want to offload this real estate beforehand, this commercial buildings or what have you. A lot of it too is, I mean, it's understanding your market. Some markets will do a lot better. If you're in medical device equipment production or in the medical space, healthcare space, you're going to do great. If you're still serving the government space, DOD, you're probably going to do fine. Education sector is going to be doing fine. I mean, they're going to take some lumps, but not as compared to those that are more on a demand pull type of, where are you on the chopping block when demand starts to soften?
So you all caution a great deal about personal debt and business debt in light of the government debt and the way that contributes to the problem. But wouldn't it make sense if we can borrow at 5% and pay it back with 9% inflation? Isn't it advantageous to have some debt?
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell folks right now, this is a great time to take out debt. I just want to say you don't want to be refinancing your debt in 2029.
Got it.
You want to avoid that. Refinance now. It's great. Take out debt now. Just make sure it's not on a 5-year term. That's going to be poorly timed. Get a 10-year term, or don't avoid 2029. Because I get questions now like, all right, we have $3 million. We can either, do we keep our cash on hand? Do we just pay off this debt? And I'm like, refinance. I already have the cash right now. Just don't be refinancing that debt come 2029. So I know 10-year terms sometimes are not available. Banks don't like that, but
if the great financial crisis was essentially a cyclical downturn, you're talking about what's going to be a more secular downturn.
Yes. Well, expand on that. Make sure I'm following you.
Well, if we think about it from a kind of a waves perspective, every general business cycle has some ups and downs along the way, but we're talking about a fundamental disruption of the business cycle, not something that's, a year with a V bottom and coming back pretty quickly.
Yes, that's actually right. And we don't see it as straight decline either. I mean, it's a 6-year general decline, but we see 2 other periods of rise in that. It's just that the peak of those rising periods will not be above the declining peaks.
Got it.
Right? We have this period of decline. Let's call it 2030. It comes down, reaches a low, starts coming back up, but that peak is well below where we were in 2030. It repeats that one more time. Around 2036, we reach the bottom and we start growing out of that.
And so people tend to have recency and normalcy bias. So when you stand up in front of the meeting and say, hey, you're going to have a good few years, but then it's going to change, are people treating you like, geez, you're predicting the flood and it's just not going to happen? Or are people really embracing the idea and preparing?
I'm more surprised how many people are embracing it. And I think that really goes to what Brian and Alan have built over the last 40 plus years. They built a brand built on accuracy, honesty, and transparency. So there's a lot of respect behind that, which I think helps. I've certainly met folks who have really pushed back, and that's perfectly fine. I kind of leave it as we can agree as gentlemen or disagree as gentlemen. It's interesting, usually always to note the spaces. I always ask, what do you do? I would say more likely they're in the financial advising space and they're in the room.
Got it.
And which I get. I'm basically saying your industry is probably going to be more hurt than not. They're like,
and
the
buy and
stock
hold
market
model
always goes up.
The buy and hold model is probably going to blow up.
Yes, that's what. And so, I kind of, as gentlemen, we can disagree is how I leave that. But I would say surprising. It's very humbling to go out on the road under the ITR brand and hear the stories. I've heard plenty of stories where someone's come up and like, Brian and Alan saved my business during the Great Recession.
Wow.
And you're like, wow. I mean, it makes me like, all right, I got to be on top of it. I got to be tight. Like I owe it to Brian and Alan to make sure I continue to do this well.
Thinking about the financial advisors or wealth management that you were talking about, there's a great Upton Sinclair quote that I'm going to screw up, but I mean, basically what it says, it's hard to convince a man of something when his salary depends on not understanding it. And, I see that in a lot of places. I see that with the people doing the traditional digital marketing who just think they're going to do SEO research and publish a blog post and somehow that's going to drive the business.
Yeah, I mean, I have a really good friend who's in the PR space, and it's amazing to talk to him about how it's been completely disrupted to help businesses get noticed out there, especially that you're competing with just a whole new ways. There's so much more noise out there and avenues to make noise.
ITR's suggestion is that companies envision themselves as smaller, stronger, scrappier, agile players. Is that mindset, or should they be cutting back, or should they grow using AI rather than adding bodies? Is there a specific way to achieve that?
Yeah, I think I love your word agile. I use flexible. I might switch to agile. I think it sounds better, so I might steal that from you. It's the one piece of advice that over the next 5 years, invest in technologies that minimizes your need for labor growth. Right. Make your labor more productive, your employees more productive. I don't like the word labor. It's too dehumanizing, so I try to not say it. But you don't want to burn out your employees. You want to make them more efficient at their jobs. But two, another big one to say is audit your business. Look at your products, your offerings, under which are not worth it, which don't have that margin, and it becomes that, can we improve it, or we need to move away from this and lean into where we have more success, and that's more flexibility as well. Look at the markets that you're serving. I mean, that's why we help with at our clients is like, this is not a long-term play in this market. We need to be expanding over into these other sectors, so you have this to fall back on. So it's a combination of audit and cut and lean into the areas that are going to have more long-term success, but also have that. We're telling businesses have aggressive growth goals the next 5 years. Be very aggressive with your growth goals, but grow in the right areas. That's where that audit comes into. So you have that flexibility to move into the markets and be successful, diversify, but invest with ways that make you more efficient. It's cliche as a consultant to say be more efficient. I don't like saying that. I mean, okay. But stress test your business. We're estimating wages are going to rise 25 to 28% the next 5 years. That's substantial. If all things are held constant in how you grow and how you add people, can you handle that? Probably not. So that's where it's going to be imperative to what tools can we add?
So that brings to mind two things. There was a fairly big focus recently on the letter that the founder of Shopify sent around, Toby Lutka, where he said, basically, we're not going to allow you to add any headcount until you can come and explain to us how you've looked at using AI and are convinced that AI cannot do what you need done. The other is a client of mine that does cobots for metal fabricating. And the idea that, certainly robots have been around for a while and they're getting easier to program and easier to use, but a cobot that you basically wheel up without all the floor space, without all the cages, without all the necessity for programmers and special skills, and you let your welders or your metal workers incorporate it into their workflow so they can become more efficient. You still got the people that bring the tacit knowledge and the expertise and the years of understanding the nuance and the everything that has to be there, but they're able to become so much more productive without having to hire more people.
Yep, that's exactly it. I'm very bullish on what AI can do, especially in the industrial space. I'm a little, I don't know if worried's the right word. I just don't like the way it feels. I spoke with a manager at one of the largest manufacturers in the U.S. recently. I won't say the name because I don't want to get sued or anything. But he was talking to me about how they were a young guy too, younger than me. I'm 37. How much they use AI, and they use AI to the point that it's now almost removing the creative thinking on his part, where it's just analyze this. What am I missing? How do I optimize this? What can I change in this product? And I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. Because I don't know. I mean, the machine's only as smart as us, the human beings. I get it. It has access to more knowledge because it's pulling from all these different places. But that could really dumb down a leader that's supposed to be at the top, innovating and being almost in this entrepreneurial role. So the idea of can it assist, but I don't want to take, like you said, that tacit knowledge that these from the manager down to the guy that's been on the floor for 30 years and just I don't want to take away from that. I think local knowledge is underappreciated.
It's also interesting. I was at a financial investment conference the end of last week, but on each of the 2 days, there was a session that made a very strong case for why essentially this expert class and this era of experts that we've had is probably ending. And the ability to think creatively and holistically and integrate ideas and threads and bring emotion and recognize fundamental truths and beauty. I mean, it got rather kind of philosophical, but to your point, I think AI has the potential to displace a number of average workers. And I think that extraordinary people, and they may only become clearly extraordinary in that context, but extraordinary people that bring these other ways of thinking about things are going to thrive.
Yep. And creative destruction is real, right? But it's also always remembering the human person that does get disrupted. At one point, a lot of horse and buggy carriage repair guys were put out of work by Henry Ford, and they suffered.
Right.
But in the long run, the world was better for the automobile, but it's not forgetting those that are displaced at the same time during that process of destruction.
All right. So let's take a situation where the board of directors and the executive team listen to an ITR presentation and they come down on opposite sides of it. Either the executive team says, "Oh, we got to get ready for this," and the board says, "Don't be silly, just keep going, same course and speed," or vice versa. Any recommendations on how to try to work through that to get everyone aligned around some sort of a reasonable outlook?
Wow, that is a great question. I have not been purview to that big of a division in the rooms. I get to go on site to board meetings for a lot of my clients once a year. Not a lot. It's always an open invitation. Not as many as I would like take me up on it. I think generally the way I would want to position it is your business, if you're preparing for the 2030s, you're not going to be worse off if it doesn't materialize. Right? Let's just say you take all these recommended steps. We're going to audit our business. We're going to sunset some products so that's not worth it. We're going to lean more into these spaces. We're going to diversify in different markets. We're going to manage our debt intelligently. So when we're heading into the next decade, we have keeping our powder dry.
Right.
God, if it's about to be a booming growth year, you're also in a great position to make different decisions. So You're not any worse off by hoping for the best and preparing for the worst. And I'll joke. The longer I've been at ITR, the more I listen to Brian Allen, the more I look at the data, I am more and more confident and convinced they are right. They let us debate them and test, and we argue internally, and we try to push back. A lot of the younger folks, like AI's productivity gains. I think that'll solve the baby boomers leaving, and Brian's very adamant that we probably don't have a long enough runway. even if every major technological innovation in history, the runway is shortened, 5 years probably isn't enough.
Right.
I tend to agree with that. But let's, in a hypothetical world, if for some reason we get a technology or AI advances fast enough beyond our wildest expectations that we're not seeing this, we're wrong on the right side, right?
Right.
I guess I'll be on an apology tour, but everyone will be happy.
Now, you mentioned earlier that the U.S. will be in a good position. I think ITR is projecting that countries with abundant natural resources, with an inclination toward business capitalism, with some kind of growing population, are going to emerge stronger. And you all see the U.S. as one of those.
Yep. I'll tell everyone, I tend to end my presentations when I'm on the road with the 2030s, which is kind of, I don't know if that's the greatest way to do it, because I'm trying to rah, we got to take these next 5 years. Oh, by the way, depression, someone called economics the dismal science once. I deliver. But I say during the downturn in the 2030s, the U.S. will remain the number one economy in the world. It'll be the best place to be. Europe will have a tougher time. Asia will have the worst of times.
Really?
China, Japan are really in a tough spot already.
They basically got an inverted population pyramid.
Yeah. China's one-child policy. It's coming back to get them. Japan and Asian countries do not do immigration. They're not big on immigration either. Again, we have no official declaration where we think it's going to come. If I was in Vegas betting on it, I would pick China or Japan as the originator of this downturn. Japan's financial situations, I won't go into it. It's a rabbit hole. They are really playing with fire right now. And they know it, and I don't think they have a way out. Right. But the U.S. will remain the number one place. China's, I think, Ray Dalio, really smart guy, wrote the book. I forgot what his name was. Book is now. That he often will predict China would overtake the U.S. He's way smarter than me, so I don't want to act like I know more than him. But I fundamentally disagree that China will never overtake the U.S.
That's an interesting example. I believe very strongly that Dalio is a smart guy that brought a really brilliant mind to creating these models and looking at history. But I think that he's got this recency bias. He made a lot of money in China. China, I think, accommodated him and helped him make a lot of money. And so he's built his career on China being this growth story and this exciting place to be. He's built relationships. He's making money. And I think that he's biased because of that.
Yeah, I agree. And he puts a lot of emphasis on the history. Like, if it happened in the history, it'll happen in the future.
Right.
ITR, we have a similar outlook on long-term cycles, but we don't emphasize, we say history rhymes, it doesn't repeat. I think he's closer to the repeat side of things as well. But I think your point about his relationship with China kind of creates that bias as well. Really smart guy, right? Billionaire, unbelievably successful. I could only wish to be, a fraction of his brilliance, but I would say I fundamentally would disagree with him on that outlook.
If you only had three macro metrics on your dashboard, what would they be?
Business to business spending, which is non-defense capital goods new orders. That's more of where we are right now, right? That's more of a present situation, but I'm always watching B2B activity. Maybe the money supply, which is really nerdy, M2. I guess maybe PMI. I'm always thinking about long-term, where I'm looking out. Like, money supply is, and in the end, is always going to predict inflation the best. Purchasing Manager Index, I think about the industrial sector the most. So I want to get an outlook for industrial production. So maybe the PMI, although that one recently hasn't been my favorite. But maybe those three. I think about B2B spending the most. Which correlates very strongly to industrial production. So I only need one, but I'll take the B2B spending. The M2 money supply, because I'm thinking about inflation, and that gives me that long-term outlook there. And then I'll take the Purchasing Managers Index.
All right. So you mentioned you think mostly about industrial. That's certainly the audience here is largely industrial manufacturers. Is there any nuance that they need to understand about the ITR forecast in that kind of a sector compared to being in medical devices, as you mentioned, or something else?
Yeah, I think if you're in the industrial sector, you have the leadership to lead a company in the industrial sector takes much more resilience than if you're in the service sector. The downs are harder if you're in the goods producing side of the economy. The service sector just feels slowdowns, as in we're still growing, just not as fast. Goods feels it means if you're in leadership, you need to react faster and with confidence if you're in the industrial side, which I think is where ITR really brings that value for them to be able to act, to hopefully make data-driven decisions and put blinders on against the headlines. Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to. I feel like I lost my train of thought a little bit there
but that's fine. Thinking about capital equipment manufacturers in that space, there's always this wrestling match between messaging: we're going to save you money with automation, or we're going to help you deal with the labor availability problem with automation.
Yep.
Does one of those resonate more with business people now, and will that shift during the good years and then the slowdown, do you think?
Yeah, I think I would imagine right now, based on my conversations that I have regularly, the idea of alleviating labor constraints would sell more than just save you money at this point. I think as we move into the 2030s and some tougher times, it becomes more about saving money.
With 25% wage inflation.
Yeah. Right. I mean, just every time I ask someone, what's your biggest obstacle? They'll give me 2 or 3. Labor's always included. Right. I can't find people where I know that guys are getting burned out. I'm trying to keep people in house. It's where's the labor? I mean, the good labor's not available. The qualified folks aren't around. I have one client who's up in Ohio. Towards the end of last year, they're really feeling it, and I was asking him like, "Oh, are you considering layoffs?" And we were typically saying, "Hey, try to avoid layoffs. We're going to come out of this. You don't want to put yourself in a tough position." He's like, "No, but I'm just letting them fail their drug test." And I was like, but I was like, that kind of speaks to where we came from. We were just throwing bodies at the problem when demand was through the roof, right?
Right.
There were just whoever we could get in the house, and now he's kind of let things self-correct a little bit.
You live in a really beautiful part of the country in the Shenandoah Valley. I think of it. I mean, I rode the Skyline Drive and one time on my motorcycle, so you're kind of right at the top of that, I think. But you're also right on 81, and so you ought to have a pretty good roadside seat, if you will, to trucking traffic. The stories I'm hearing about the tariffs impacting the trucking industry are really horrifying. Are you seeing that at all in traffic on 81 or not?
Doesn't feel like it yet, but I think the average freight from China takes 20 to 45 days to get here. The real impact should just be about to start hitting now.
Got it.
Where anything orders canceled or not placed, now we're going to start getting the empty ship showing up. That's going to start affecting it. So I'm expecting it to start to show up more. I mean, just today I got an 81 and I was like, I got to gun it. I have 3 tractor trailers here. We're all going
in both lanes. I mean, they drive in both lanes and there's no way you can get around it.
Yeah, I was like, I got it. You don't merge casually on 81.
Do you have any time in that part of the country to actually get out and enjoy nature?
Well, yeah, we do at least one Shenandoah National Park trip every year with the family. Both my parents and my wife's parents love it. So one of them, one is going to the beach, one's going to Shenandoah, and we mooch off both of them equally. Are
you a history buff? Do you enjoy the battlefields?
Huge Civil War history buff. I got a Civil War painting right here. I have another one over there. And actually, I got one behind me. Oh, that's just a ship. I do the battlefields. I got bullets I metal detected in my backyard. So Battle of 3rd Winchester came through my backyard. So there's bullets littering you just have to take a metal detector back there.
And Bull Run is spitting distance from GMU, isn't it?
It's where my wife grew up, right around the Bull Run battlefield. So you got the big Stonewall Jackson statues there. And, I love it. So
thinking about traffic on 81, I'm always fascinated by alternative data sources. I mean, you mentioned a couple of big ones, like M1 is certainly not an alternative data source, but whether it's load rejects and trucking that I see, there's a guy on Twitter, Chuck Fuller, I think his name is, has got a lot of interesting stats on that. Or I hear about satellite photos of restaurant parking lots to gauge, consumption habits. Is there some set of unconventional data that you find particularly interesting in the industrial space?
Ooh, I'd have to think about that a little more. You caught me off guard. Unconventional data. Oh, the one I feel like this one will be kind of lame, but recently I think it's been very helpful, especially coming out of our over inventories where everyone was overstocked. There's a series, and it's actually broken down in a lot of sub series, so you can probably find the niche that you're in. But it's called a sales to inventory ratio across wholesale goods, both durable and non-durable, but mostly durable stuff. But it shows you this great relationship between the sales and the inventory, and when it drops, it's showing you that inventory is way up, sales are way down. So you can see some demand activity when it starts to go up. You can see, hey, inventory is declining and sales are starting to pick up. Mm-hmm. So it's a great, and it leads typically 9 to 12 months on industrial production.
That far out.
So it can give you a nice 3 to 4 quarters heads up of where the demand pool is headed.
And is that available through the Fred site, or do you have to?
Yeah, I think you can find them on the Fred sites and the Bureau, or the Bureau of Labor Statistics, BLS.
Oh.
But yeah, there's probably 15 to 20 subsectors they put out there, and they typically have 8 to 12 month lead times.
So, going back to the restaurants thing, maybe you can help me reconcile this. For a couple of years, I'm hearing about growing default rates on auto loans and rising delinquency on credit cards. But you go by a restaurant parking lot and there's cars waiting out on the street waiting to turn into the parking lot. Is it just different levels of wealth where I'm seeing those things, or what am I missing about it?
Yeah, I mean, the middle upper income certainly are still out spending a lot more than the lower middle income. You listen to McDonald's or Walmart earning calls; those can be a little depressing right now. And that kind of gives you a reflection into those folks. Those are the folks that also decided the election. They're the ones that felt inflation, and right. It doesn't matter who's in office. If they're feeling it, they're going to kick you out. I just saw recently retail sales at restaurants. It's still growing. It's slowing growth, but it's still growing year over year.
That's based on food inflation, or is it growing? Is it real growth as well?
Yeah, this is real growth. But it's pretty dang flat. This is deflated. It's like 0.5 or something, but it's like, all right, we're trending flat, maybe normalizing something. Folks are still out there eating at restaurants, probably showing that 0.5 is probably showing more and more choosing to eat at home. I mean, for me, if I take my kids to Chick-fil-A, it's $80. And they don't finish their chicken. I'm like, that is the best chicken. Finish it.
Yeah, but then it's on the counter when you get out of a meeting and go upstairs, and then you eat the rest of it.
That's also the problem.
One thing I know in general is that professional services firms are pretty weak in marketing, but ITR, in contrast, seems to have built its franchise and reputation on marketing. There's tremendous content creation. There's obviously all the public speaking. There's podcast. There's over-indexing on video. Where does all that come from? Is that the natural inclination of the Bolio brothers? Did they figure that out themselves, or do they have a brilliant person that they brought in that's led all that?
The Brian and Alan are unbelievably fantastic. I guess just having that general humility of listening to other folks and being willing to change. And because at times, I mean, you do something for 40 years and you've done it really well, but they have a great understanding of if you're standing still, you're in trouble.
Right.
So they've brought in a lot of really smart people on the sales side, on the marketing side. We've got very creative video folks now. They brought in these two artistic folks, Bill, the speaker trainer. He also has an art background, and we have another woman, Joy. They're both fantastic with creating a lot of our media content, and they're allowed. Brian and Alan give the space to create. Like, if you come up with a great idea, kind of run with it. So they leave a lot of freedom for folks inside to be creative, and if you come up with a great idea, they'll adopt it.
And do you have any clients that remark on it and absorb that? I mean, obviously they're coming to you for economics advice and forecasts, but do any of them say, geez, we want to start doing our marketing the way you do?
I'd have to ask the marketing team. I haven't heard that directly, that'd be a great thing to ask. If we've helped guide any of our clients, or they've commented on how we're doing things. I mean, we're always adding and trying, starting to shift. I know Brian does the Fed Watch, and we were commenting maybe we need to change it with tariffs to White House Watch now. We started the new show. Why am I blanking on it? Sorry, now I want to. Son of a goose. Rats. The show with Lauren and Lindsay. They do a great job.
So I haven't listened to that. I listen periodically to the forecast one. There's like a 10-minute podcast that comes out, I think, once a week.
Taylor.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And I cover for Taylor when he's out. Trends Talk. Yeah, we have that hour-long show now. I'm gonna come up with it because now I'm gonna feel bad because they do an unbelievable job with it. This is what happens when you're 2 weeks into paternity leave. Your brain goes mush, and I find out how hard it is to be a stay-at-home parent. It's way easier to be at work.
Right.
I will confess to that. Mondays are easier than Saturdays. By the numbers. My goodness. Okay. Sorry, Lauren. Sorry, Lindsay, if you listen to this.
All right. So along the lines of marketing, talk about your clients. Who's a great fit for ITR and for your practice?
Yeah, we have typically, not exclusively, the industrial space, but we have folks that are more in the service sector. We have a few tech companies. So it's not exclusively. I would say 20% are non-industrial. Ranging from business, we have the $9 to $10 million year business. We have business that do over $1 billion. I would say maybe the sweet spot's that 20 to 50 million. I'm kind of making that up, but when I think about the clients I work with, like maybe that's the median.
Right.
We don't work with startups. They don't have business cycles yet.
Right.
But anyone that kind of fits within, typically it's the industrial sector, a little bit more of an established company, at least been around 5 to 7 years. Then you have some data that we can start seeing your cycles and understand your markets and how you fit. And that's anyone that kind of fits within that. And we always do an analysis of any prospective client. We look at their data before we bring them on. Can we forecast this well? And we're not shy about turning folks down, saying, hey, I don't think we would deliver a good forecast for your business that would be valuable. We want to protect our 94.7.
Sure.
And we don't want to waste the time and money of a business that just wouldn't be the right fit. So
and how about across any sponsor portfolios in the private equity space? Do you only work with individual companies?
We are growing in the private equity space. It's a concerted effort. We've had a lot of growth there. Crow, who we're now a subsidiary of, we're owned by Crow. They've really helped us kind of break into that space as well.
Got it. What resources do you recommend for folks that want to track the business environment? Obviously, the shows and the content that you offer, are there other podcasts or YouTube channels or blogs that you think are particularly good?
Probably one of my favorites to follow. They're apolitical as well. They will talk a little bit more about policy, but they do a great job of writing for the layperson. Is the American Institute of Economic Research. It's AIER, and it's a lot of George Mason professors will be fellows there, but they do a great job. They have one of their sites is called The Daily Economy. That is a great one to follow, and their podcast, The Daily Economy, I think does a great job. There's an economist there, Peter Earle. He's my friend that told me you can wait till your 50s to get your PhD. It's no big deal, but they do a great job. I love all the content. Samuel Gregg there as well. He's now the temporary president. Their current president had left to go do something, sabbatical.
Right.
But he wrote, I think, one of the best books recently about the future of the U.S. economy. I think I have it behind me. I want to call it the next American economy. Great book. Highly recommend anyone read it. It's a lot about trade, industrial policy, protectionism versus globalism. I think he does a great job in that book, and it's written for regular folks.
Good. How should folks get in touch with you?
With me personally, just directly. My LinkedIn is my name. I don't do much social media besides LinkedIn.
I'll put your LinkedIn profile link in the show notes.
Yeah, Feuz at ITR Economics. You can always reach out, and then obviously the ITR website to contact us is a great place to do it.
Good. Wrap us up. 2 or 3 minutes on the next 5 years, the 2030s depression, and how middle market manufacturers should prepare and what they should expect.
Yeah. Next 5 years, focus on aggressive growth goals and look to this year, especially invest in your business this year. You're going to get your best interest rates, the low point of inflation. Look to invest in efficiency gains and, audit that business as we discussed so that you have those aggressive growth goals the next 5 years. You want to grow your business as we head towards the 2030s, but you want to make your business more agile or flexible and be aggressive with pricing. especially as we get out of the uncertainty into the back half of this year and folks are feeling a lot better. Inflation's coming back. Raise your prices when sentiment's high. So you're not, when inflation shows its ugly head again, you're not trying to catch up.
So a lot of people, when they say aggressive with pricing, they mean cutting it. You're actually talking about the inverse. You're talking about raising as quickly as you can.
Yep.
Got it. Great conversation, Michael. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining. Your camera's temperamental. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me for this conversation.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
Good. For everyone listening, if you're not too freaked out by this forecast, then share it with your team. If you are freaked out, all the more reason I guess you need to share it with your team. Use it as a conversation starter around changes you should begin to make. And please be sure, you know the drill, share it, like the episode, drop a comment. If you've got a question for Michael and you leave it in a comment, I'll make sure that he gets it and jumps in and answers it. Thank you for listening and watching the Industrial Growth Institute podcast.